In the ancient world, power often changed hands fast, and death often came without warning. People feared the obvious threats, swords, arrows, open revolt, but they feared the quiet ones more. Poison fit that fear perfectly. It left no battlefield. It needed no army. A ruler could ate, drank, or took a remedy, and simply failed to wake. The idea alone unsettled courts and councils. Poisoning also created a special kind of panic because it turned ordinary trust into risk. A servant poured wine, a physician offered a treatment, a guest shared food. Any of it could become a weapon. Leaders responded with precautions. Tasters restricted kitchens, sealed containers, and constant suspicion of rivals. But certainty stayed out of reach. Illness looked like poison. Poison looked like illness. Doubt became part of politics. That uncertainty fed fascination as much as fear. Stories spread about deaths that seemed too convenient, too well-timed, too clean. Writers and historians repeated rumors, and those rumors shaped behavior even when proof never appeared. The key point stayed simple. Poisoning promised control at a distance without open confrontation. Long before anyone documented a specialized murder tool, elites already lived with the thought that danger could hide in plain sight. Before any ring earned a deadly reputation, jewelers already solved a simpler problem. People carried small things they needed close, protected, and easy to reach. So craftsmen began building hollow spaces into rings, tiny compartments hidden under a decorative top. It sounded like pure ornament, but it worked like a container. A finger stayed with you all day. That made the ring an answer to storage, not violence. These early concealed rings held practical, legal contents. Some carried scented balms to mask smells or refresh the wearer. Others stored a pinch of powdered medicine meant for sudden nausea, pain, or travel sickness. Religious owners placed minuscule relics inside, treating the ring as a portable token of protection. The design stayed discreet on purpose. The value came from privacy and convenience, and the wearer controlled it with one hand. Once jewelers proved the mechanism, demand pushed the craft forward. Lids fit tighter, bezels lifted more cleanly, and the cavity became just large enough for a small dose of something useful. The ring did not look like a tool, and that was the point. It blended into normal life, even into status and fashion. A hidden compartment on the hand seemed harmless. But it quietly introduced a new possibility, concealment that traveled anywhere. The hidden compartment had started as a convenience, but it did not stay innocent for long. As political rivalries tightened, people looked at the same little space and saw a different purpose. A scent or a pinch of medicine already proved the idea. A ring could carry something small, potent, and private. That realization changed everything. Storage turned into strategy. A ring worked because it belonged on the body. It passed through greetings, meals, ceremonies, and crowded meetings without explanation. And the contents could be prepared to match the moment. A dry powder that left almost no trace, or a sticky paste that clung where it touched. The ring did not have to look like a weapon. It only had to arrive. Once that possibility entered the mind, suspicion followed. A private compartment meant a private choice, and in tense circles, privacy looked like threat. The same design that carried harmless fragments also carried a promise of deniability. If something went wrong, the ring still looked like jewelry. The danger was not just poison, it was how easily it could hide in plain sight. Once the idea took hold, the ring stopped looking like a private tool and started looking like a public signal. In elite circles, people wore jewelry to show access, taste, and power. A concealed compartment added something else: deniability. A person could stand close, touch an object, or handle a cup, and nothing seemed unusual. The ring blended into court life. That was the whole advantage. Courts had run on favours, rivalries, and information, and poison fitted that system because it rarely required a blade. Rumours followed the rings from one household to another, carried by servants, diplomats, and merchants who watched the powerful up close. Soon, the rings gained a double identity. They were fashionable, even admired for workmanship, but they also carried an unspoken warning. Everyone understood what they might hold. That reputation made the rings useful even when they were never opened. A whisper about a hidden compartment could intimidate an enemy, frighten a guest, or raise suspicion after an illness. Espionage culture fed on that uncertainty. When a death looked sudden, people looked for an object that could explain it, and the ring offered a neat answer. High-profile stories spread fast, and proof mattered less than fear. As people learned more about the body, poison stopped being a vague idea and became a set of specific tools. Trial, rumour, and observation built a rough science of dose and timing. That changed what a ring could carry. Earlier users relied on messy blends, bitter pastes, crushed plants, unknown powders, hoping something in the mix worked. But a ring compartment stayed small. Guesswork wasted space. Over time, certain poisons rose above the rest because they fit the hiding place. They stayed potent in tiny amounts. They travelled well. They dissolved or they clung when needed. And they produced effects people came to recognize and plan around. That meant a ring no longer needed a dramatic quantity to be dangerous. A pinch could replace a smear. Precision made the concealment believable. This new knowledge also made poisoning more repeatable. The goal shifted from simply harming to controlling the outcome. How fast, how quietly, and with fewer traces of a strange mixture. For covert rings, that reliability mattered most. Carrying smaller doses reduced risk at every step. Less to spill, less to smell, less to explain if discovered. The ring became less a gamble and more a calculated backup plan. Once a ring could hide poison, the next problem felt obvious. Hiding it did not kill anyone. Getting it out, quietly, quickly, without fumbling, mattered more than the compartment itself. So designs changed. Hinged bezels appeared, built to flip open with one practiced motion. Some lids snapped shut again just as fast, leaving nothing visible. The ring stopped being only a container and became a tool for action. Other rings used spring-loaded lids that released a pinch of powder or a smear of paste with pressure from a thumb. It simplified the moment of transfer. A touch to a cup rim, a quick brush near a shared dish, and the dose moved without pouring or measuring. The mechanism reduced hesitation, and hesitation was danger. In a crowded setting, a second too long drew eyes. Speed protected the user as much as secrecy. Some designs went further and added sharp points, turning the ring into something that could break skin. A scratch could place poison where it acted faster and looked like an accident or a minor injury. It also created a different kind of contact. A handshake, a shove, a staged struggle. Food and drink still mattered, but skin and wounds widened the options. With each change, delivery became easier, and the line between jewelry and weapon grew thinner. In the early modern period, poison stopped feeling like a private fear and started looking like a public threat. Rulers and city governments treated sudden illness as potential sabotage, not bad luck. If a diplomat collapsed after a banquet, suspicion spread fast. People watched servants, cooks, and guests. A ring with a hidden compartment no longer seemed like a clever trick. It seemed like a reason to interrogate everyone. That suspicion produced investigations, and investigations demanded explanations. Officials questioned witnesses, searched personal belongings, and tried to map who touched what: food, cups, linens, even medicine. At the same time, anti-poison law grew louder. Handbooks promised tests, antidotes, and protective habits, even when the science stayed uncertain. The result mattered more than accuracy. Poisoning became a crime people expected, prepared for, and accused others of committing. Once a threat became expected, states tried to control it. They regulated the sale of strong substances, monitored apothecaries, and treated unexplained deaths as cases to pursue, not mysteries to accept. Courts prosecuted clandestine poisoners with harsh examples because fear demanded a warning. Hidden delivery tools, including altered jewelry, drew special attention during searches and trials. The ring's secrecy stopped being an advantage. It became evidence. As more records survived and more deaths got investigated, the old certainty began to crack. Stories of poison rings had multiplied for centuries, but clear proof often stayed missing. Chroniclers had repeated rumours, rivals had blamed rivals, and sudden illness had invited an easy answer. Historians started asking a simple question. Where were the documents, the bodies, the chain of evidence? When those pieces failed to line up, the ring shifted from fact to suspicion. Scientists added another pressure test. Many poisons needed the right dose, the right path into the body, and time to work. A ring could carry only so much, and a powder spilled easily. Skin contact rarely delivered enough to kill fast, and food or drink contamination demanded proximity and opportunity. The more researchers compared the mechanics to real symptoms, the more perfect assassinations looked less perfect. A clever device still faced stubborn biology. That skepticism did not erase poison rings from history, but it narrowed the claims. Investigators separated rings that merely hid substances from cases that showed motive, access, and a plausible delivery. Sensational tales lost ground when they relied on anonymous witnesses or vague timing. Even when a ring existed, it often explained nothing about the death itself. The myth survived because it felt believable. The documented record stayed thinner, and the gap between legend and proof became the real story. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the balance shifted. Death no longer ended the question. It started one. Hospitals, police, and coroners relied more on routine post-mortems, and laboratories began treating a suspected poisoning as something that could be measured, not guessed. A hidden dose in a ring still looked clever, but it stopped feeling invisible once a body met a standardized examination. Chemical tests grew faster, cheaper, and more consistent. Investigators compared stomach contents, organs, and blood, then looked for patterns that matched known toxins. Autopsies followed checklists, not hunches, and records allowed cases to be matched across cities and years. The old advantage of discretion collapsed. If a poison created a telltale trace, it could be found later, even when the delivery method stayed a secret. That pressure changed how poison rings functioned in real life. As practical weapons, they became high risk and low reward because the crime scene extended into the lab. The rings did not vanish, but they shifted categories. They turned up as curiosities, heirlooms, and collector pieces, valued for their story more than their utility. In the modern forensic era, the ring's mystery survived, but its advantage faded. By the time modern forensics took over, poison rings had stopped working as a practical secret weapon. They had started working as an idea. The same object that once fed court paranoia now sat behind glass, labelled, dated, and explained. Collectors hunted them. Tourists photographed them. When a ring turned up in an auction catalogue, it sounded dangerous. even if nobody could prove it had ever killed anyone. That difference mattered. In the earlier world, suspicion often filled the space where evidence could not. Illness looked like murder. A sudden death looked like a plot. With limited testing, a rumor could act like a verdict. The ring's hidden compartment felt like certainty because it matched what people feared. But fear did not equal function, and many supposed poisonings never showed a clear method or a traceable substance. In the present, replicas and costume versions kept the shape alive while stripping away the risk. Movies and novels treated the poison ring as a shortcut to instant silent power. That image spread faster than any documented case ever had. What remained was a symbol of discreet killing, not a common tool of it. The legend grew larger than the proof, and the ring ended up remembered more than it was used.